I actually enjoyed being nearly disappointed right up until the end when it all came together for me. I was just like, why? Oh! Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. It's from Myanmar. Pretty dope. Very interesting story behind this coffee. It's delicious. More to come on that. It's come to my attention that the patron-only content for the $1 and more patrons on Patreon seems to have been a little bit difficult to find, the patron-only reviews. So I've gathered them into a list that I'm going to put in the description box for every review moving forward so you can see what's available, and I'll just add to the list as we go on. So cool. If you're interested in what the patron-only reviews are, they are listed below. So thank you so much. Again, all of those are available for those who donate $1 or more to the show on Patreon, and there will be a new patron-only review coming up early next week. A review from a certain Japanese author that I have a great affinity for, who died in a very spectacular way. I'm sure most of you will have absolutely no issue guessing who I'm talking about, but which book will it be? That's the question. It has something to do with this season that is ending. I'll just give you that. So, anyways, thank you very much to all the patrons. I really appreciate it. Today's review is sponsored by the wonderful GoodwillBooks.com. They now have over 1 million items available on GoodwillBooks.com. That includes not only books, but also music, movies, and video games. They have an awesome selection for very reasonable prices. And I found some really great stuff in there for sure. And you can feel good about it. Every purchase made on GoodwillBooks.com goes to provide free job support and career development services for people in the communities that they serve. Plus the prices are low and you get free standard shipping on every order. And that is awesome. It's definitely a perk for me. Stamp of approval. So if you would like to pick up some books for very reasonable prices and also do a good thing for the community, please do not hesitate to check them out via the link below. And also I would suggest you subscribe to them for upcoming discount notifications. So check it out. I'm selling these bookmarks for $4 each. It's just my face with a friendly reminder. They are $4 each plus shipping. It's pretty cheap if you're in the US, and if you're outside, it's a little bit more expensive, but not too much. If you want to shoot me a message, I will happily provide a quote. Thank you so much. Also, if you like, I'm happy to sign them. Anyways, howdy y'all. Good afternoon, how you doing? This is one of those book reviews when I introduce you to one of the greatest things you've never heard of. Today is The Sundays of Jean Dézert by Jean de la Ville de Mirmont. I can't speak French, but I wish I could. Hopefully my pronunciation isn't too bad. Translated by André Nafis. This is terrific. I want to reread it as soon as possible. This was a gift from the excellent Wakefield Press. One of my favorites, in my opinion, right up there with any of the other publishers that I've mentioned. I'm partially sponsored by Wakefield Press, and in that they send me free books from time to time, though I requested this one specifically and they were kind enough to provide it. So thank you very much, Wakefield Press. I sincerely appreciate it and I really enjoyed it. They're wonderful. The quality of their books is really superb. Really, really nice looking books, and also, just they're very choice selections. I think they're great. This was actually a recommendation from the comments section on one of my videos. I thought it was the last Welbeck review that I did, the Elementary Particles, and that would make sense because Welbeck actually has a blurb on this book, but now I can't find it. I couldn't find it when I looked. So whoever you were, thanks 1,000, because this was awesome. I really enjoyed this. Not at first though. For me, this was a real about face, which is unusual for books for me. I'd call it a subtle work of catastrophic genius. I mean, it's great. So it's about this fellow, this young guy in his 20s named Jean Dézert in the early 20th century, working in France in a bureaucratic position, a ministerial employee, I think as he puts it, the character in the book. Everything about Dézert is responsibly common. Ordinary, plain, dull. He's acquiesced to whatever life gives him or brings to him. It's not even stifled because there's no drive. There's no nothing inside him. It's just, yeah, like emptiness, as Welbeck will say. He's just looking at what passes him by. He's like on one of those things in the airport, like one of those people movers where you just stand there. People just stand there with their luggage. I guess you're supposed to actually walk so you can get there faster, but people just stand there. And that's kind of what he's like. He just stands in place and life kind of just travels by him. He's just looking at what passes him by. He's not searching for anything, Starts like this. Let us call this young man Jean Dézert. He is dressed in such dull clothes that unless you bumped into him on the street, you wouldn't make him out in a crowd. He wears a detachable shirt collar that's too large and any old tie. His trouser legs and jacket sleeves bend at the knees and elbows of their own accord. His feet are comfortably snug inside his well-worn shoes. What more could one say to paint a fuller portrait, other than that his long face, with its carefully shaven cheeks, offers nothing more astonishing than a large mustache? It is difficult to conceive what role, or indeed any useful part, it plays in such an understated appearance. Jean Dézert's skinniness will tell you that he never served under the flag. In fact, he engages in very little physical exercise, being employed at the Ministry for Public Good and Welfare, in parentheses, Equipment Department. Wow. So it's a work of catastrophic genius, but you'd never notice it because, like the character, it doesn't seem to want to be noticed, the book itself. Yet, ironically, this is what distinguishes it and allows it to transcend so many other books. I mean, this one has got a relatability to young men today, young women too, sure, but you know, the character's male, in a way that is shocking. I mean, deeply disturbing on some level. It reminds me slightly of Stoner by John Williams. Amazing book. Perfect book, really. But darker. Jean de la Ville de Mirmont is like a precursor to Welbeck, but less vitriol, right? Less caustic, for sure. Though less humor, too, which makes it for a really dry read, but that's the point. And by the time you get to the end and you kind of like start over again, like I read the first page again, and I was like, oh, okay, this already seems like to have like, it seems imbued with new life after I've read the full story. I mean, what was it? Was it Bloom that said that reading is rereading, and then Chris Villa told me that? I think that's what it is. I mean, that's so true. So anyways, actually, by comparison, Welbeck seems almost flamboyant. I mean, really, Welbeck's almost like he's like entertaining compared to this one. This one is not trying. Mirmont is not. He wasn't trying to impress us. He just made something impressive. So of this book, Welbeck said, Jean Dézert is like a brother to me because of his ability to escape despair by means of emptiness. Yeah. So Jean Dézert, this character loosely modeled off of Mirmont himself, is an office worker in Paris and leads a humdrum, meaningless existence. He eats dinner at the same restaurant all the time, and his only friend is this other man who eats at the same restaurant. They've been friends for years. They don't meet outside of the restaurant. He's not unintelligent. He seems observant. He's not cruel or callous or anything. He's not really depressive, except that, you know, he's quiet. But he's disinterested. He's not spiteful, not pessimistic, or unfeeling or rude or anything. On the contrary, he's polite, responsible, thoughtful, but bored. And bored in a way that is vast. All-seeing and all-knowing, all-encompassing boredom. Like he knows what's in store in life. He's already kind of just seen it. Life is a joke he's already guessed the punchline to. And it's not at all clever. So Jean eventually meets this 18-year-old girl, and they become engaged. And while her father warns him, sort of, that, you know, she tends to change her mind, Jean continues with it. Until one night he finally tells her something sincere, something of consequence about how much he loves her. Centuries of boredom, Elvire, that's her. Centuries of office life take fire before the fantasy you represent to my ministerial employee's soul. And she looks up at his face, for the first time ever, it seems, and suddenly realizes that he has such a long face that he'll never do. And the wedding is called off right then and there. It's like, unfortunately, that's probably actually happened. It's terrible. Afterwards, Jean decides that the most practical answer would be suicide. But first, there are a couple of things to try out. He's been molded so much in the manner of a bureaucratic employee, with such formality, that his thought process seems to work in the same dry fashion, which is sort of hysterical in a way given what's actually happening. I will read that part to you now. When he'd had time to think it through clearly over the course of a week in his office, Jean Dézert summed up the result of his meditations. In such a case, there are 3 cardinal points which allow one to obtain oblivion. The first consists in throwing oneself headfirst into pleasures. In other words, in living it up. The second lies in alcohol. The third, there's no lack of precedence, is death. This last recourse is the least expensive and the most reliable. But before resorting to that, perhaps it's a good idea to exhaust the other 2 first. So, it's a dark comedy, in a way. So Jean de la Ville de Mirmont, a French poet and author, has a a very interesting but tragically short biography. The very first thing that you're going to hear about him is how he died, which is a very interesting thing. We're talking about somebody's life. The very first thing we hear about is how they died. You have to have a very specific kind of death in order for that to happen, I think. And Mirmont had an epic death, not an epic life. His life was the polar opposite of his death. That's the interesting thing about this. So let's talk about that. The very first thing on his Amazon page bio is how he died, which, far from the tone of this novel, was actually in kind of a spectacularly violent fashion in World War I, when he was buried alive by a shell explosion. It's a hell of a thing. It didn't kill him right then, though, which is horrible. It's rather grisly. It buried him and broke his back. And later, he died at the hospital, I believe. I mean, it's very tragic. That's awful. So, Le Dimanche de Jean Dézert, or The Sundays of Jean Dézert, was self-published by Mirmont in 1914. Self-published. He did this himself. It was his only novel, though he wrote some poetry as well. He was 27 when he died. It was a very tidy novel with much more to meet the eye than there seems at first glance. I'm not sure if I've ever read a book wherein the full effect was so impactful only when you read the final paragraph. It was a surprise. It was almost like a joke, like a really long, dark joke or something, wherein all of a sudden the kind of initial blasé tone of the novella is shattered, and everything that's just happened in the story comes rushing in behind you, like a giant gust off of the water, like through the downtown skyscrapers of some city next to a river or something, where it's just blown through the corridor and it's like freezing. It's like whoosh, and then you get it all of a sudden, and you're like, whoa. And you just read it again. You read the last paragraph again, and you're like, wow, right? Wow. I almost never say wow these days when I read a book. But this one has a real lasting power, I'd say. And all of a sudden, a piercing kind of reality shines forth, right? A kind of truth that is dismal. Things are changed. Something is new. We've now crossed over. We're here now. This is actually the way things are. I actually enjoyed being nearly disappointed right up until the end when it all came together for me. I was just like, why? Oh. It was cool. It was like a structural surprise, which for me seems really rare these days. The novella was self-published. It doesn't play by the rules. It didn't need to. I believe it's been said that this is a precursor to existentialism. Certainly one is reminded of stuff like The Stranger by Camus, and maybe bits of Welbeck. What he manages to do is summarize not only the unbelievable meaningless malaise of being a young person with an okay job, making an okay living, enjoying his drab Sundays of insignificance, wandering, searching, but not really searching, more just like looking, just like observing, without purpose. But he is also able to, in a single flourish, outline the total ineptitude of the theoretical solution to said meaninglessness, which would, in a cliche fashion, be suicide, and how even that is not really good enough. If you love the whole early 20th century French thing, but you're also kind of like lonely and jaded and bored with the modern world and wondering why the hell nothing is actually happening for you, you might want to check this out. It might provide some insights. It does not encourage suicide at all. Suicide is actually meaningless, basically, for Jean Dézert. It doesn't do anything, right? That's the problem. It's like Styron said, where he said, like, you know, I'm paraphrasing, I think, but he's like I think it's from The Trouble with Being Born, which is like this super nihilistic, but also kind of like, if you're in the right mood, sort of humorous, like collection of aphorisms. He said something to the point of, it's never worth killing yourself because you're always killing yourself too late. Yeah, that's it. I've always laughed when I read Chiron. He's just such a he actually would have been an amazing stand-up comedian today. I feel like that would have been his realm. He would have been like the best. But anyways. But what's most disturbing is that Mirmont has touched on something that continues to this day, something that is universal and timeless, and that is just the absolute and total meaninglessness to most of our lives. Check this out from the translator's introduction by André Nafis Saeli. Writing in the pages of Le Figaro littéraire, 53 years after his friend Jean de la Ville de Mirmont was buried alive by an artillery shell in the trenches of Verneuil in late 1914, François Mauriac made the following remark. It is strange to hold in my hands a new edition of my friend's works. Stranger still to learn new things about a man I loved, a man whom I thought I loved. Things that he didn't confide in me, or worse, things that I had gradually forgotten, as if Jean had never stopped dying inside me over the course of the last half-century. For instance, I never knew, or perhaps had forgotten, that Jean de la Ville had lost several brothers and sisters as a child, or that he had once tried to commit suicide by swallowing ink. Swallowing ink. Had he lived, what would we have meant to one another? Would he have had a literary destiny? For the 20-something de la Ville, just as for the 40-year-old Charles Péguy, the war was quite simply a relief. Yes, it was the most horrible war the world had ever seen, in which millions of young men murdered one another, but they also saw it as their destiny's final terminus, a means to suddenly give their dead-end, onerous lives some heroic meaning. And that's what I'm concerned about today, right? Because you could just as well see, like, you know, the swaths of aimless young men just succumbing to patriotism or some sort of you have a void right now. You have an open position for somebody to step up and motivate everybody to go and die for some sort of heroic cause, so to speak, right? Nothing changes, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I hope as Americans, after all these wars, that we're just not falling for it anymore. But, you know, I think I'm more pessimistic these days about things. So please, you know, be wary. Be wary. Don't just buy into what everybody else is doing, thinking that it's a good thing just because they said it was good. Think for yourself. That's all I'm saying. Think for yourself. See, world peace for men at least, which may be the real proof of their inferiority as a sex, let's be honest, and I think Welbeck would agree, is impossible. They'd die of boredom. You can never have it, world peace. You can't have it. It's impossible. You have a bunch of pent-up, bored young men, both sides, and they need something to do. Mark my words, this is how the Third World War will be. You have right now, in America, in Europe, everywhere, you have bored young men and women dying for meaning, dying for it. That's the modern crisis, aside from the forthcoming economic collapse that's coming. A crisis of meaning. When the collapse happens, this will all disappear. It'll just be, the meaning will be very simple. Food. My fear is that the cycle will not end, that the marketing of these movements of death and destruction will simply just be made fresh once more, that the idea of dying for glory or country or for freedom or whatever you want to call it, whatever the raison de jour, will simply be repackaged and marketed by the ones who aren't actually bleeding out and dying on the battlefield. So here's the beautiful thing about books and literature, right? Here in this era of the pandemic, in August 2021, in this era of stifled life, of disappointment, broken, shattered dreams and goals, or just ho-hum mediocre existence waiting for the next catastrophe, day to day but not much further, no reaching for the stars, just the coffee. Here you're having a dialogue and identifying with a young French man who self-published a very short book about loneliness in 1914, barely more than an anecdote, basically the only thing he'd ever really done, before going and getting blown up in the war. And you have to sit back and kind of marvel at that, no? I mean, is that not a testament to both the power of literature and its complete inability to actually change anything? I mean, there were several major wars, including the largest between, you and I and Jean Mirmont. Dézert would perfectly well fit right in with IT or administrative support somewhere. There are millions of Jean Dézerts out there right now, unimpressed, unsurprised, and not raging on the inside. Most bored or unimpressed or depressed young men are really, in my experience, are just not raging. They're just lost, right? No, to rage is that's like the Rimbaud or the L'Autrement thing. That's a special case. Much less to do something like, constructive or artistic with that rage. That's even fewer people. And then far fewer than them are the ones who actually do something worthwhile, sadly. I feel like there's a lot more I could say on this, but yeah, I'll shut my trap for now. I should re-review it down the road a bit. Better Than Food. Yeah, I thought it was excellent. So who should read it? Those who are into the whole French flaneur thing, the early 20th century French literature. Baudelaire, Rimbaud, Breton. If you like to cheer on and Welbeck, and if you liked Stoner along with those, I feel like this is right up your alley. So I hope you enjoy. Coffee time. For those of you who are new, I take all the names of the patrons on Patreon who have donated $5 or more per video to the show. I place their names in this mason jar. I pull out a name for every review I do, and whoever's name I pull out, I send them a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious. Like I said before, this is from Myanmar, and it's first time I've ever had Myanmar coffee. It's amazing. If you'd like to get in on that and help support the show, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You can click on the link below, or you can go to patreon.com/booksarebetterthanfood and donate $5 or more per video. Thank you very much. $1 or more will get you access to the Patreon-only reviews, which are listed below, the Discord channel, and the Better Than Friday newsletter that I send out every Friday, which is just a list of 5 different things that I'm interested in at any given time. Could be books in the pipeline, music, films, clips, articles, changes week to week. If you feel we have similar taste, I think you'll get a lot of value out of that. So, hope you enjoy. Unfortunately, international shipping is not included. Sorry about that. Thank you very much to all the patrons, and best of luck. Okay, here we go. Get in there. cm.co. Thank you very much, cm.co. You're going to receive the Sundays of Jean Dézert, plus some delicious coffee. Hope you enjoy. Thank you so much. All right, well, that's all I've got for you today. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and you'd be so kind. Really appreciate it. And always remember, bring a book wherever you go. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night. Talk to you soon. Ciao.